Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new video. We're going to take a look at the silver price today, and I'll define price targets that I believe are possible in this current crisis. Yes, the Iran conflict is still keeping silver on edge and gold too. We're seeing significant pullbacks here. I'll also explain, or rather delve into, why this isn't so surprising, what I'm viewing here from a perspective short-term but also long-term, and naturally silver mining stocks, which price targets could be interesting there. Before we begin, of course, a quick risk disclaimer that everything I share or state here does not represent a buy or sell recommendation and is certainly not financial advice, but solely my personal opinion. Most importantly, always conduct your own thorough research, naturally. So now let's go into the market and take a look at the silver price. We see here, for those of you who have already watched my gold video, it's essentially exactly the same situation, the same pattern, the same overall picture. If we take a closer look at it, in March, that's when the sell-off essentially began, or rather it was triggered, slowly pushing us into crash territory. Now, with the tensions we're seeing in the Iran war, there's continued pressure on silver prices and of course on gold prices. And if we take a look at this from a technical chart perspective, we can see that silver had a really good bounce here, quite similar to what happened back then. This means from a chart technical standpoint, we now have a pretty significant support zone right around $65. And if that doesn't hold, I genuinely believe we'll then drop below $60. And if we consider this, and we will also draw on examples from history so that we can understand it, or rather better put it into perspective, how we must manage this situation. Because I believe you can do some things right here, but also quite a few things wrong. It's very, very difficult. And that's why one needs to be extremely cautious here. Fundamentally, I naturally don't like that we're experiencing such strong selling pressure, that we're now continuing to test these lows. I think, especially when I look at the current news situation and this escalating spiral, that the upcoming week, it could certainly turn out quite bumpy, to put it mildly. I believe we might even have a chance that we'll see a real washout on Wall Street, meaning that by the end of the week, we could close with minus 10% on the indices, and partially see that. Well, I think this is going to turn out really brutal, and consequently, it wouldn't be out of the question that, and I've actually said this for gold already, that we could potentially see silver prices here, then moving towards 60 or even below that level. If we take a look at the big picture, we naturally see, wow, silver has, of course, performed really well. Sure, but purely from a technical chart perspective, it's essentially here, if we look at this larger trend, actually just a correction. We have the 50-week line at $58, certainly a significant level. And of course, the most important level at $50 below which I would really rather not see silver, because, well, that would essentially break the market structure here. We now have, in essence, a textbook example. If you look at it from a chart technical perspective, it's a very, very beautiful cup and handle formation. Yes, then we experience the breakout, and what typically follows that is indeed a retest. And what that means is a test, or more precisely, that silver temporarily drops to $50 is certainly a possibility. And it would actually be, if we consider the very large picture, looking back over the last several decades, that wouldn't actually be such a bad thing at all. But only if we manage to hold that $50 level and then move upwards from there again. The thing is, now with this Iran war, we don't just have a small conflict that's briefly in the headlines. Instead, we face the risk of a worldwide recession with escalating inflation, meaning a significant inflation risk. Accordingly, as the EIA also stated, we're witnessing the biggest disruption in the Gulf and oil market that humanity has ever seen, worse than the oil crisis of the past, and we'll take a closer look at that. We're now seeing, after a good rally, which was really strongly overbought, especially on the monthly chart, we're now seeing this sell-off, and this is it. We're in a high-risk environment now, where the market is slowly getting panicky and scared, and everything that did well is simply sold off, and that also applies to gold and silver. This means we have risk off, cash is king. We also see this in the dollar index, which has continued to rise. And I'm curious to see, as we witness the ongoing escalation spiral, if it won't climb even higher and thus exert pressure on both gold and silver. Well, let's take a moment to look at past crises. What kind of situations have we experienced recently? For example, we had the war in Ukraine, which also caused a brief setback here. Beyond that, there was also Corona that was somewhat diluted by the expansive monetary policy we saw. But the economic problems ensured that silver didn't do much either. It actually performed a little better than gold, and that's very, very interesting, and we can keep that in mind here. because we absolutely have to compare the current situation with something comparable, and that is in principle the 1973 oil crisis. And how did silver perform back then? This is actually quite interesting to observe. The oil crisis started roughly in 73, and here we briefly see, of course, a rise, likely also due to inflation fears for silver. But then when the economic problems hit, we then see the sell-off in silver. While gold, and you might have seen this in my gold video, experienced a more significant downward correction, here silver has managed to hold its ground quite well. And this is my scenario, or rather what I'm hoping for this crisis we're currently seeing, that we could establish a comparable chart pattern here. That means we also have this surge here, perhaps for different reasons this time, but a similar surge. And we're seeing a volatile sideways movement here with $50 as the lower boundary. And this is precisely that very, very important support zone that we definitely don't want to fall below. And I also think that silver holds up quite well, because essentially an ounce of silver is still an ounce of silver, but $50 are simply no longer $50. They're worth less, if you understand what I mean. And that's precisely what provides the silver price with a certain level of support. And that's why I would actually say that we have quite a good chance of never seeing silver below $50 again. Yes, that naturally also impacts silver mining shares, partly due to the falling silver price. But, and this is important to note, production costs are rising significantly as energy prices climb. And we see here, if we compare it from its peak, silver has already corrected quite a bit. We are currently down 44%. That's already significantly more than with silver itself. The silver mining stocks have now essentially, First Majestic has experienced exactly the same thing. And that's precisely why I also say that the silver mining stocks might perhaps temporarily perform a little bit worse, exactly because of this pressure on the production cost side, that we could potentially see even further problems here. So from a technical chart perspective, we've got the 50-week line here at about $15, and that's also roughly where the 200-day line is situated. This means we now have a first opportunity for a quick bounce. Well, this is more or less, if the Strait of Hormuz doesn't open up, actually just a bull trap or a rally within the existing trend, and that is downwards. This means that we could then see prices for silver at $55 and also below $15 for First Majestic. This chart pattern is more or less the same for the upcoming silver mining stocks. Yes, we see a similar picture here, and pause. And one must not forget that silver mining stocks are for now pausing and pause in a very, very difficult environment. Now pause, and one should therefore not react too early. Pause. We see here, I have also drawn in the upward price target. Well, things have really turned 180 degrees, and that's just how it goes on the stock market. We're now seeing a slightly more positive picture here with Pan American, because their fundamental situation is also better. Yes, we have significantly better margins, net profit margins, especially than with a company like First Majestic. And that's where we can see these small differences between the stocks. Some will outperform, others will underperform, and Pan American is one stock that's currently outperforming. This means it's not falling quite as dramatically. That doesn't mean it's rising, but simply falling less than the other stocks. So we're now essentially in the same situation, almost at the 200-day line. This is an important support zone where we are slowly reaching. That also means a chance for a bounce for those who trade is naturally quite interesting. I'm doing it, I've actually become a bit more active there, especially on the short side though, regarding the indices, but that's a completely different topic. If we consider the whole situation, here's also the 50-week line. You can see that the parallels to First Majestic and also to the other silver mining stocks are quite evident. And if we don't hold that, should silver fall towards $50, then we'll also see prices, I would even say, below 50 Canadian dollars for Pan American silver. Yes, Hecla Mining has also performed extremely well in recent months, and the stock has naturally also taken a significant hit accordingly, and perhaps even, yes, even more so. Perhaps it's also connected to the fact that the stock might have performed a bit too well. One could perhaps also say that the whole situation has somewhat stabilized again. We are currently 50% down from the high, and we're also touching the 50-week average. If we look at the daily chart, the 200-day line is also approximately there. So that means we now have here quite similar, almost exactly like with the other stocks, the initial support zone at $15 US. But I think we have a very good chance of falling below that level, heading towards 12. From a fundamental perspective, I've already stated this point. The exact same applies to gold, that once the economic uncertainties are truly a thing of the past, meaning when the global economy is once again expanding, when the entire situation has essentially resolved itself, then I believe that we can truly find silver appealing again for a sustained longer term period in terms of perhaps even reaching new all-time highs. However, that is still quite far off in the future. We can't look that far ahead. We're in such a volatile environment where headlines can change daily, actually dependent on staying on top of the market every single day. And therefore, I'd also like to make a little self-promotion here if you want to stay on the ball. I'm now doing regular live streams, usually every Saturday. Now, as long as we have this crisis, and maybe even sometimes during the week, please leave a thumbs up, of course, and subscribe so you don't miss anything. This way you'll stay informed and we can collectively, with discussion, questions and answers, etc., better understand the whole situation so we can manage it all correctly. I've been on the stock market for 16 years. I've trained for this. Now it'll show if I'm good or bad or not. So let's continue. Hecla Mining is basically exactly the same. Fresnillo, yeah, if we measure here how much the stock has fallen now, it's still relatively moderate. It has actually held up quite well. Daily chart, we still have a bit of room here, so more than 10% to the 200-day line. Here's also the downside risk. That means if the markets drop now in the coming week, then we'll also see 30 euros for Fresnillo. And the stock has, of course, performed extremely well. That means I wouldn't be surprised if we then see $23. So also because it's already very, very steep. Everything that rises so steeply tends to fall extremely steeply again in the corresponding environment. Yes, that means an important zone to mark here again, I think, is for one, the zone we're in now, but I don't think it will hold up very well because we still see global escalation potential and that we rather have to expect the stock to drop another level here. Then we have to reevaluate the whole thing. Beyond that, making predictions or assessments is, I believe, relatively difficult at this point. Silvercorp metals, let's quickly take a look here as well. And there we're currently down almost 34%. Exactly the same picture. Yes, we now have the 50-week line here. I'm essentially repeating myself more or less. That means we now have a crucial support zone that needs to hold where we could see a bounce. Naturally, even when we see this bounce in silver mining stocks, we typically also see that bounce in silver itself, the actual asset. That means it's going to be a truly, truly exciting week. Either this week will turn into a bloodbath if we see further attacks on the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure in Iran, but also then as a retaliatory strike in the Gulf region. And that is, of course, absolutely devastating. So this isn't just, that we're stopping the oil flow, but we're actually destroying oil production right now. And that is the perfect definition for a catastrophe. Basically, nothing else really comes to mind. Let me know in the comments what you think. I consider it catastrophic from a global perspective. That's simply the way things are. We have to deal with this and manage the entire situation. For Silvercorp metals, I've actually drawn it in as such. However, I also believe that here we will drop below $10. The current situation is simply too pessimistic for me to see any real signs of short-term bullishness, except for specific trading opportunities where you might be able to catch a small bounce.
So Coeur Mining.
Also 36% down. Yes, we're seeing the exact same picture now. We're slowly nearing the 50-day line. The monthly daily line is also there. This means we are actually already in a very important support zone. We have here again a small area where we turned around. This means you can also see this as a support zone around $14. But then it gets quite thin if we consider the whole picture, because then it goes down significantly again towards $10. So it's also not to be ruled out here that things could get a little bit worse for Coeur Mining. So I think that's all for now. From my end, feel free to write in the comments how you see these silver mining stocks. And it's quite a difficult situation right now, I would say. But we are staying on top of things. We're looking into it thoroughly. And then I truly hope that we'll see each other again in one of the upcoming videos. Until then, I wish you all the best, much success, and please leave a thumbs up. That would make me very happy and support the channel. Thank you. Until then.